coaching being the central tool that is going to transform education, is going to transform healthcare, is going to transform careers, et cetera. And I think it's an antidote to automation because there's so much talk, there's all of this emphasis on how technology is changing and not enough on how humans are going to be changing, assisted and supported by these new methodologies and new tools that are going to help us get through this transformation to the next stage of wherever humanity ends up.
This is The Edge of Human and AI, a Viva la Coaching podcast. We sit right where coaching meets AI, and we're not afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions. We built this show because the coaching landscape is being reshaped by intelligent systems, and the organizations, leaders, and companies shaping that future deserve honest conversations. I'm your host, Rebecca Rutschmann. Each week, we'll help you understand how AI is transforming coaching. We discuss leadership development and human growth across organizations. We will help you navigate the ethical and strategic decisions that come with bringing AI into the coaching space. You'll hear from researchers, innovators, and industry leaders, as well as experts who are reimagining what's possible. Whether you're navigating AI for the first time or already building with it, this is where you belong. Follow us now and join us at vivalacoaching.com. Come stand with us at the edge. We're starting our podcast with a special season from the leading voices of the NYU Coaching and Technology Summit 2026. We will bring you bold, unfiltered conversations at the frontier where coaching meets technology and artificial intelligence. Expect real talk, sharp minds, and unfiltered conversations where we dare to ask the difficult questions. Throughout this series, you hear guests mentioning the NYU Coaching and Technology Summit, the room where some of the most important conversations in our field are happening right now. Today, I want to bring you the person who helped build that room. Dr. Anna Tavis is a clinical professor and chair of the Human Capital Management Department at NYU School of Professional Studies. She's the director of the NYU Coaching Innovation Lab and the creator of the NYU Coaching and Technology Summit, which she launched in 2022 before most of the world had heard even of ChatGPT. She's the co-author of The Digital Coaching Revolution and Humans at Work, a Thinkers 50 honoree and one of the top 100 global influencers in people analytics, 3 years running. Before academia, she led talent and learning at some of the world's most complex organizations. She has been watching this transformation longer than almost anyone in our field. And rather than just writing about it, she built the infrastructure, the conversations, the curriculum, the community to help the profession actually meet it. Anna, it's so great to have you here. Every time we connect, there's just this magic and energy, like really something genuinely in motion. And today we actually have a reason to celebrate 5 years of the NYU Coaching and Technology Conference, and that's not a very small thing. When it launched back then, it was one of the bets on the future that not everyone was ready to take. It's still bold, and it's planting something real, didn't it?
I am thrilled to be here. I am really happy because the sun is shining and we are on to something very exciting.
For anyone listening who hasn't crossed paths with you yet, and I know that number is shrinking, rather than me rattling off your credentials, I'd love to hear it from you. How do you describe what you're building at NYU and what's the mission that drives it?
And I want to start with the mission. I know traditionally you kind of go into the past, but I don't want to go there. I am really looking at how we are positioning ourselves in the center between technology and humans and how it's transforming how humans relate, how humans work, how humans even think with this big and extreme bias toward humanity. But at the same time, rather than being in full denial of technology or going all the way in the other direction, I believe that we need to be intentional in how we structure these relationships with technology, humans and technology. And that's where I believe coaching is a pivotal methodology and approach to how this relationship needs to be configured. I know it's a little academic, but that's the whole point of the conference. We decided to be very specific and focused. There are multiple, as all of you know, conferences on coaching and coaching research and coaching methods and frameworks, etc. But we want to be focused on specifically role of technology in shaping the future of coaching.
Thank you. And how would you define or describe your role to the audience?
In my day job is I am the academic chair of human capital management programs, which gives me access to not just coaching, but mainstream HR, as well as HR, technology, and analytics. And that's how this also conference came together, because we do have a program in executive coaching or consulting at all master's level. But at the same time, it's where we've started noticing the Venn diagram between technology, data, as well as the mainstream HR practice. And that's how this conference came together, from the influence of all of these different specialties, but with a focus on specifically coaching.
That focus really matters.
Yeah.
There's so much noise, and you've chosen a very specific signal. Let's do a quick time travel, because I think context really helps here. 5 years back, what was actually happening when this conference first came together? For someone listening who lives at the intersection of AI, technology, and coaching and is thinking, how does NYU fit into this? Give us that origin story.
Going back 5 years puts us right at the tail end of the pandemic. And I think it was that exogenous shock of the pandemic that made all of us rethink our relationship with technology, being mediated through different tools as we communicate, connect, etc. And I remember the very first summit was in 2022. We still had to produce our vaccination certificates going into the conference, and the majority of the audience were wearing masks because that was still the time.
I remember the pictures. Yeah.
Yes. And that was exactly the moment when we kind of put ourselves at the cusp of that wave that was just starting out to create a movement in the coaching field. But we were just at the very cusp, and all of the early companies, there was just a handful, and they all showed up. We had BetterUp, we had Coach Hub from Europe, we had Ezra, again from Europe. There was just a handful, I think like 5 major companies that showed up, and they were still primarily using platforms to just make a connection between, it was sort of a pre-AI phase, between people on the other side of the screen providing coaching services, right? Because prior to the pandemic, as I was still, researching that time, the conversation was still questioning whether coaching could even be done via video. And that was the technology. So is it ethical to do coaching through a video? And there were these pioneer companies like BetterUp and Ezra and Coach Hub, and they were literally startups. Like now they are major companies, but they in $1 billion, right? BetterUp. And those days, so we literally were just very, very innovative. And in sitting here in New York, which was the city affected through COVID, we were able to put ourselves in the middle of that conversation. And we just keep going. And that conversation has evolved. AI came about, and there are so many different companies that are showing up now We only have space for like 30 companies, and there are many more of them. And we want to continue to feed the ecosystem with the valuable conversations about how to preserve humanity in this overwhelming trend toward automating everything.
So we've got the roots. Now I want to pull us forward, because 5 years in this space is like 50 years anywhere else. The rate of change is extraordinary. Given everything that's shifted, where is the conversation heading? What's the frame for this year's conference and beyond?
So where we are today, and then I will jump into the future, is we are looking at what we call, the theme is coaching at organizational scale. So what technology provides us with is the ability to scale to the levels that we could not ever imagine by using just purely human coaches, right? So what we're looking at right now is multiple use cases of companies of all sizes now looking at coaching very differently, not as a, highly paid, esoteric executive perk, but as a support system, almost supplementing, augmenting, if not in some cases replacing learning and development, because personalization and relevance at the time of need, delivery of those types of services is where the top of productivity, top of effectiveness, and the impact of those types of technologies and methodologies are most effective. So that's the theme of today, scaling. And then in the future, what I am going to be looking at is not just L&D, but how coaching will be integrated into pretty much everything we do. We're going to be supported in all aspects of our lives. One of the facets of our conference this year, again, is going to be how health and well-being are going to be, through these technologies and coaching, are going to be an integral part of employee well-being or employee kind of holistic service that the companies will need to deliver. And so I think we're going to see many different iterations of applications of these types of technologies, with the coaching being the principal methodology because of the personalization, and technology being the vehicle that enables us to scale. We are going to have really, really interesting transformation of the workforce, of the learners, the students, the educational system. So all of it is downstream from where we're now. But I think, again, we need to be on the cusp of that opportunity and that innovation.
You developed a new health coaching program also at
Yes.
NYU. How does that fit into that future that you're seeing?
Yeah, there are several aspects to that. The health and well-being, and I like that combination because when people hear health, most of us still associate it with kind of clinical support, right? And oftentimes when I talk to medical schools, they're saying, oh yeah, we have coaching, but they have coaching for their doctors. What I'm talking about is coaching the patients, coaching the ecosystem, coaching the families on the strategies to stay healthy, to be on the preventive side of it, and also the post-treatment, et cetera. Like one of our students just launched a nonprofit to support, who is a coaching student, to support survivors of breast cancer, and sharing that you need to integrate. If you went through the treatment, you had your doctors, et cetera, but then you need to reintegrate into the society. And it's not necessarily a career reintegration, but you kind of have a different identity around your health. And that's where you kind of feel totally abandoned and alone. And so I'm seeing these adjacent applications where people are beginning to realize that well-being is an absolute central point of productivity, success, career. Because if you think about career, to be successful in a career, you have to be healthy. You have to have that energy. You have to have that motivation. And before, we just didn't have the bandwidth. We didn't have access to data. We didn't have the skills. And I think that's where we're putting that as a day 2 of the conference. But I hope that people will start realizing how central it is to the coaching mandate or the coaching mission in organizations.
And the other way around, no? Like, I
Yes.
think coaching will be a very central element moving forward
Exactly.
of our whole society. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it will enter all these different fields everywhere because it will become an essential skill and tool to learn for the future.
Absolutely. As you know, I'm a big advocate for this particular coaching being the central tool that is going to transform education, is going to transform healthcare, is going to transform careers, et cetera. And I think it's an antidote to automation because there's so much talk, there's all of this emphasis on how technology is changing and not enough on how humans are going to be changing, assisted and supported by these new methodologies and new tools that are going to help us get through this transformation of to the next stage of wherever humanity ends up.
This phrase, deeply human, it keeps surfacing. As AI accelerates, it almost feels like an urgent call rather than a soft idea. What does being deeply human actually mean to you in the context of coaching and what's coming?
The way I look at it is that we will have to rethink the last at least 20, 30 years of not only education, but even socialization. Obviously, I have an educational bias here, but we always felt that as soon as kids start walking, with a few exceptions, they have to start coding. They have to learn those skills that are going to be helping them create sustainable and paying jobs, find those jobs, et cetera. And I think we need to change that altogether. I love, and you're probably familiar with that, MIT came out with this research a couple of years ago where they focused on epoch skills. That includes empathy, hope, even hope and vision, and creativity and critical thinking. And we don't even know what to do with it. What's really amazing when we say, to your point, deeply human. I'm so glad that you're asking me to define it, because with the exception of the yoga studio with a kind of faux spirituality that was out there for marketing purposes, we didn't give ourselves enough space anywhere to be deeply human. And I think right now it's almost a necessity. My personal focus is on how to bring that humanity back, not despite of the technology, but because the technology will allow us and almost force us to go there. The one chapter I wrote in one of my books on empathy, specifically looking at empathy, and I came to the conclusion that with the right use of AI, we can actually train people in empathy. Retrain, because a lot of that skill has been lost through socialization that was so skewed toward that kind of very aggressive, individualistic, gain and profit-oriented society that we live in. And so I think that technology, and what I am observing, and I live in New York City, on the subway, people are reading books. It's really incredible. There's kind of a new trend, Rebecca, because you are from across the pond, but it's a new trend. People are reading books on the subway. It's like, forget those phones. There's still enough people on the phones, but there is this kind of new revival. Ariana Huffington talks about it as a renaissance. Like we're experiencing not just transformation, but renaissance from the humanity perspective. And I think this is, even though we're called coaching and technology, I think we're about human renaissance. But if I put human renaissance there for the title of the conference, I probably
you will attract a different crowd.
Yeah, very medieval scholars, medieval scholars who are going to be coming to my conference, right? But yeah.
Looking at, we're heading towards, it's only a few weeks left until the opening of the next conference. What are you most excited about or to hear from at the conference?
Again, I'm very excited about some of the people coming back and tracking with them of how they evolved with us, along with our fifth iteration of this conversation. There's going to be a lot more CHROs. What I'm seeing that this conversation is really becoming to be a front and center for the most senior people in organizations. This coaching mandate is not in the esoteric corner of a person responsible for executive development anymore. It's becoming a CHRO agenda. You're going to hear Nicole Lamoureux from IBM. She's going to talk about the transformation her organization went through vis-a-vis coaching and technology. If I could just give you a little bit of a preview, because I talked to Nicole before, and she said that if you asked her 3 years ago, she would have said, there's one part of HR that's never going to see any automation or any kind of technology, and that was coaching. And now she's totally changing her approach. And I think a lot of it has to do with, obviously, the evolution of tools, et cetera, but also the organization gave itself time to think about how to use these tools and coaching strategically, again, at the organizational level, knowing how huge the mandate for the transformation of skills, preparing the workforce for AI, because as you're going to hear at the conference at IBM, they have a commitment not to automate jobs. They have a commitment not to lay people off, but give them the opportunity to grow with the technology. And then you're going to hear that story. She's going to talk about how rethinking what technology could do and how coaching could be that vehicle she's looking for. She transformed what they are doing vis-a-vis, the workforce. And the main mandate of any company right now is automation.
I want to ask you something on behalf of our listeners, because many of them are practitioners, coaches, OD specialists, psychologists, researchers, people who are both in the room and on the receiving end. They understand the fundamentals, but they're asking, what is the next edge? You're sitting at a really unique vantage point. The academic lens, New York as a laboratory, and watching this whole ecosystem evolve in real time. What's the message you'd send to the people who are ready to lean in?
Stay curious. Absolutely. Ask questions. This is what coaches are so good at. And I think engage with the trend, because it's one thing that you step back and you kind of listen and you hear about it. But without getting yourselves involved, and there will be, even at our conference if you come, but there are so many of these really innovative, dynamic companies that are looking for guidance and maturity of the coaches who have been in the profession for a while. Partner with them, learn what they're doing, because one of the things that I discovered starting this conference is all of this innovation came from engineers. If you look at the founders, almost later on, now we have more coaches jumping into the entrepreneurial space. But the founders were like engineers, because their approach to things, I see an issue, I have a product I can plug in and solve it. And I think that that's a sort of longer term is a recipe for disaster. Because even though we appreciate the engineering talent, it's the really partnership with the coaches. It's the partnership with the explorers in the human psychology space, in the research that we're engaging in of this intersection of technology and human mind and human psyche. So instead of just watching it fly by and making comments without engaging, like we've all been there. Some of our colleagues are making pronouncements about what this technology is and how it could impact, et cetera, without really being engaged with the field. And I don't think we have, at least at this point, we don't have a luxury of staying out of it. And this is where I celebrate Rebecca, the group you've built. And as you know, we are bringing, and we're going to be redesigning our executive program involving more technology, not necessarily to replace our amazing executive coaches, et cetera, but really making them aware of the power of that technology and giving them space to influence where this whole trend is going to go. And that's all about our conference. We want to be helping shape what this is going to look like rather than being like blown over by these new tools and the engineers who are coming in and doing something to us rather than with us.
Perfect. And to close, a quick one for anyone who's never heard of the NYU Coaching and Technology Conference. They're discovering it right now through this conversation. What should they expect if they put it on their radar this year? And what's your bigger hope for the people stepping into this ecosystem for the first time?
First, you're going to join a community of like-minded people. Even though you are new, we're very welcoming. Everyone's eyes are going to be open. Even myself, I know who's coming, but the level of innovation, open-mindedness, and curiosity, all of that is going to be collectively shared with the participants. So there's not going to be, I'm new to this and I don't know the language, et cetera. You're immediately going to be immersed. It's an immersive experience with what's happening. And then coming out of that, I think everyone will make a personal kind of commitment to staying connected and maybe building some bonds and connections to the presentations that are going to happen. And if you are a CHRO or an internal HR practitioner, you're going to hear a lot of peers who you can connect with and share best practices. I think it's just going to open so many opportunities for you to be thinking about the future, whether you're a coach or an internal practitioner or just somebody who is curious about that space.
That's it for today's episode of The Edge of Human and AI, a Viva la Coaching podcast. If this conversation opened something up for you, the best thing you can do is share it. Send it to a colleague, a client, a fellow coach, anyone who's asking the same questions you are. The more of us standing at this edge, the better the conversation gets. Follow us on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And come find us at vivalacoaching.com, where you'll find resources, community, and conversations you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back next week with another voice from the edge. Until then, come stand with us at the edge.